There's nothing more satisfying than to come out on a ship like this. It's adventurous. They get to see new nations, new peoples, but also to help other people can meet a deep need in their own lives as well.
It's been 30 years since David Cowie and John Brignall began the work of Marine Reach. Neither of these men could have possibly dreamed of the impact the ministry would have on so many. Over 1 million men, women and children have received medical care in 18 nations across the South Pacific and Southeast Asia. In 1990, the Pacific Ruby was given to the ministry. After undergoing dry docking in Tauranga, she sailed for Norfolk Island on her maiden voyage. She had a cruising range of 9,000 miles. Under the experienced leadership of Captain Laurie Collins, the crew battled storms but made it to and from Norfolk Island with great courage and determination. In 1991, the Pacific Ruby's second trip was to the Cook Islands. At 32 meters long and with the capability of carrying 32 people, she sailed all the way to Bacan Island, one of the most remote countries in the Pacific. This time she carried Dr. Lauren Cunningham and his family and a team in order to reach the last remaining nation yet to be visited by YWAM. It was time to introduce our new ship to our Aussie cousins. In 1993, the ship carried out a 9-port tour of Australia. The response we received was overwhelming. Our team spoke to over 60 churches, whilst over 3,000 people visited the ship. Funds were raised to pay for the onboard medical clinic, and tons of food was donated to feed the crew. 2.5 tons of medical supplies were loaded, along with 2 dental chairs and hundreds of pairs of reading glasses. Lauren Cunningham travelled with the vessel, sharing the vision for ships to work around the world in the cause of the Great Commission. The arrival of the Island Mercy was extremely memorable. In 1994, the ship had been donated to Marine Reach by Mercy Ships, and after a 2-month maintenance period in Florida, the vessel was sailed through the Panama Canal and then on to New Zealand via Tonga. Work began immediately to upgrade the vessel to 80 berths, with a number of officers on board turned into cabins. Hundreds of young people from church groups and YWAM teams helped with the endless chipping and painting, turning the ship into an attractive vessel. It was time to introduce our new ship, the Island Mercy, to the New Zealand public. In April, the ship embarked on a 12-port tour around New Zealand. This was a great opportunity for the public to take a closer look at the vessel and to meet and get to know the crew and staff. In July 1997, the Island Mercy returned to Papua New Guinea for the 3rd time. All supplies came by plane or boat, and it was by boat that the majority of men and women came for medical care. This trip was especially significant as it was the first time we started doing cataract surgeries on board our vessel. The stories of patients who received their sight was deeply moving, like Peter, who after travelling by canoe for 3 days with his son, received his surgery and saw his son for the first time. In 1999, the Island Mercy sailed to the Philippines just before Christmas. Government leaders welcomed the ship into the nation, thus beginning a 2-year tour of the Philippines, with thousands of lives being touched by the ministry. In 2001, the Pacific Link was purchased in the port of Tauranga. The vessel was ideal for the small coastal communities and already had a partly developed place for a medical clinic. Once again, a clinic was built to accommodate both dental and cataract surgeries. In 2003, the Marine Reach base in Fiji was pioneered. A year later, in 2004, an Australian couple gifted a truck to start our mobile ministry. Between 2002 and 2019, we have treated over 66,400 Fijian people through the ship and our mobile teams. In 2006, Captain Brian Sloan began to pursue a vision to see YWAM ships serving in Europe and the Mediterranean. In March 2007, YWAM England purchased the 42-metre Swedish training vessel, renaming her the Next Wave. After 21 years of operating ships across the Pacific, the Marine Reach Board felt it was time to establish a shore-based training centre for our new crew and staff. A piece of land was donated just outside of Tauranga in New Zealand by a generous couple, and building began shortly thereafter. The property was blessed with beautiful views, hosting a waterfall picnic area and scenic walks. Students began arriving from around the world, with the centre now accommodating hundreds of staff and students every year. Prayer is a central part of the Marine Reach ministry. In 2012, the chapel was built on our training property, inspired by Catherine Hollister Jones. The chapel was built as a replica of churches on the east coast of New Zealand. The prayer chapel is the engine room of the ministry and loved by both students and staff alike as a place of quiet solitude and reflection. In 2013, Marine Reach purchased the Pacific Hope from Japan, and the crew began to sail the ship to New Zealand, where they started a refit. Our work in Vanuatu continued to grow, and in 2015, land was bought to build a medical clinic and family care centre. In 2016, the Pacific Hope refit took place. Volunteers came from around the world to help out. An operating theatre was established on board that would accommodate both dental and optical surgeries. A large room was also set aside and set up as a lecture room for several discipleship training schools that were run on board. In 2017, the Pacific Hope's first port of call was Vanuatu. She was laden down with tons of medical and building supplies for the ministry's growing medical clinic. The Pacific Hope was kept very busy, visiting numerous island communities, providing medical care and fresh water. In September 2017, the strongest hurricane since 1998 devastated the island nations of Dominica and Puerto Rico in the Caribbean. Marine Reach was especially concerned for the devastation that was wreaked on Dominica, as the Pacific Hope was registered with this little nation. After a great deal of consideration and debate, the vessel redeployed to the Caribbean. After a year of ministry in Dominica, the vessel was rushed up to the Bahamas in 2019 to lead efforts in relief work after Hurricane Dorian devastated the Bahama Islands. It remains there as part of Marine Reach Global. With the growth of the work in Vanuatu and a large donation, in 2019 2 new buildings were added to the medical clinic, consisting of a training centre and an accommodation block of 5 apartments, as well as a sports field. New schools are being run, including a diagnostic lab course, a Bible core course, village healthcare course, and a discipleship training school.
Did my DDS last year. DDS is amazing. I just can't imagine my life without meeting those people in the DDS that had really changed my life. They just loved me so much. Their love was so unique, and it reflects Jesus in so many beautiful and unique ways.
Our training facility in Tauranga, New Zealand has also grown. We've seen thousands of students from all over the world walk through our doors and been transformed by God through one of our DTS programs. Not only have the number of students and staff grown, but our schools have grown too. As well as the discipleship training school that we run 3 times a year, we also run a school of primary healthcare and a discipleship Bible school which launched in July 2020.
It's hard to believe that we're celebrating 30 years of Marine Reach. And really, it's a celebration of God's faithfulness. You know, when we first came onto this land, we were made trustees and stewards of a valley known as Gideon's Fields. Later, that became Gideon's Valley. So we inherited this biblical account of Gideon out of Judges 6-8. And it was amazing the lessons we actually learned out of that account. We learned that God can use the insignificant. We learned that we don't have to have all sorts of academic prowess to be used of God. That we can actually, as we're willing and obedient, He uses those that surrender to Him. We also learned that process is as important as the end result. A lot of these truths that we learned actually were a foundation for what became known as the Marine Reach core values, one of which was the grid. And the grid is based on Matthew 22:37-39. And it's all about loving God with all of our heart, soul, strength, and mind, and our neighbor as ourself. I believe that as we look to the future, as long as that foundation of love is there, we'll be able to face whatever comes our way, be it persecution, hard times. I think as long as we have that grounding in God, we will worship Him, the Word of God will be in us, and we will operate in gratitude.
So, where do we go from here? We live in a changing world. We live in a new world now. There are three key components that the ministry will always have. One, of course, is evangelism. Evangelism component comes out of our DTSs, where we send out teams, evangelism teams around the world to minister. Secondly, of course, is training, where we run programs like our Discipleship Bible School that we're running right now, and other secondary courses that are primary healthcare courses. The third, of course, is mercy ministries. And of course, that's reflected in our medical compassion DTS, our village healthcare program in Vanuatu, and medical clinic in Vanuatu as well. In a world where borders are certainly still not opening and may not do for some time, we'll be looking to Kiwis to attend our schools here in New Zealand, and Nivans to attend our schools in Vanuatu, and Fijians to attend our school in Fiji. And of course, our ships continue to serve under the leadership and direction of Marine Reach Global. One thing is for sure, we will continue to grow as we continue to seek God's strategy for the world we now live in.